everyone, welcome and welcome back to my channel. For Black History Month, I thought about doing something a little different, kicking off a series highlighting authors and stories that have shaped the Black experience in America and beyond. And I'm really excited about putting this series together for you guys. For centuries, Black voices have systematically been silenced, but literature has always found a way, and it's always been a space of radical resistance and truth-telling. And this month, we are going to be diving deep into the powerful works of African American authors who don't just tell stories, they unearth those stories. They confront demons in those stories, and they imagine new futures. Today, we are exploring how some of the most innovative Black authors have used speculative and historical fiction to give shape to a monster, yes, a monster, because we're going to talk about a monster, y'all, that has happened to haunt Black Americans for centuries. And what is that monster that I'm talking about? Generational trauma. So I want to ask you a question. What if the most terrifying monsters in our stories aren't the ones with the fangs and the claws, and the scary face? But what if they're the curses that we actually carry in our bloodline? Some of the most powerful novels that are out there by Black authors don't just tell stories about ghosts and demons. They unpack the very real horror of generational trauma. In the pages of Toni Morrison and Yagasi, Colson Whitehead, George Schuler, and River Solomon, the ghosts are real, the past is never dead, and the curse is in the bloodline. These are the generational curses in Black fiction that you may have read, but you may not have really seen in that way. And today I'm going to help you do that. This is what this video is all about. We have to understand the monster that we're actually talking about and really get aligned on it. And for those of you all who know me, I love looking up words and defining them. And so that's exactly what I did. I really wanted to understand what generational trauma meant. The American Psychological Association defines intergenerational trauma as what happens when the descendants of someone who's experienced a terrifying event shows adverse emotional and behavioral reactions to it. For Black American descendants from enslaved people, this isn't a metaphor. It's a documented psychological and biological reality. The trauma of slavery, the constant threat of violence, the destruction of family and identity didn't just end with emancipation. We know that, right? It left deep wounds that have been passed down through families, showing up in everything from chronic stress and maternal health crisis to fractured relationships and communication. Our beloved James Baldwin once said, actually he asked, could a curse come down so many ages? Did it live in time or in the moment? The answer, as research and lived experience show, Baldwin, yeah, it's both. The psychological legacies of slavery are a heavy clock woven from everything from colorism and self-disdain to patterns of anger and anxiety. This is the curse. A living history that haunts the present. But our Black authors have refused to let this haunting stay invisible. They have given it a name and a shape, using horror, ghost stories, and speculative fiction to make us confront the monster head on. They use the supernatural to explore the real horror of this inherited pain, and in doing so, they chart a path toward understanding and prayerfully healing. Now, there's no better place that this haunting feels real than in Toni Morrison's Beloved. I knew y'all knew I was going to say that, right? The novel, Beloved, is based on the true story of Margaret Garner, an escaped slave who killed her own child to save her from being recaptured. This is a literal ghost story, you guys. The house is at 124 Bluestone Road, is occupied by a spiteful poltergeist, the spirit of the baby daughter of the protagonist, Sethe, who was killed years ago. But this is no simple haunting in this story. Morrison uses the ghost to make the abstract trauma of slavery terrifyingly real. At first, a ghost is a disruptive but manageable presence, a suffocating force that exists because the family is trying to suppress the past. Oh, but when an old friend Paul D shows up and love and affection start to bloom, this relationship, this figure Paul D threatens to bring a sense of normalcy to the house and also a future to the family, a future hope. And let's just say, Ghost didn't like that, so Ghost fights back. It literally takes on this ghost, it takes on the form of flesh and blood and calls herself beloved. She emerges from the water like a specter of the past arriving on the shores of the present. Beloved isn't just the ghost of one child. She becomes a symbol for the 60 million and more that Morrison dedicated the book to, a poetic number gesturing towards the incomprehensible loss of life during the Atlantic slave trade. The house with Beloved in it becomes darker, more claustrophobic, and her presence in the house is parasitic. She consumes Sethe, who gets trapped in this twisted parody of motherhood and desperate to justify the unspeakable things that she did to save her child from a fate worse than death. Beloved feeds on Sethe's stories and her life force, showing us how the unprocessed past can eat the present alive. The curse here isn't just the psychological prison of memory. Sethe is haunted not just by the ghost, but by her own choices made under the impossible pressure of slavery. And the trauma is passed to Sethe's living daughter, Denver, who is isolated and stunted by her own mother's haunted past. Beloved is a force that demands confrontation with history. Her exorcism at the end of the novel can only happen when the women of the community who had shunned Sethe previously come together to help her. This is just such a powerful statement that isn't a private healing. This healing of the generation really has to be a collective responsibility. So if Beloved shows the curse trapped in a single family, Yagassi's 2016 epic Homecoming maps its relentless journey across 300 years and 2 continents, you guys. The novel's structure is itself a brilliant picture of generational trauma. It starts in 18th century Ghana with 2 half-sisters, Fa and Ec, who will never meet, not once in this whole novel. Fa marries an English slave trader and lives in comfort in the upper levels of the Cape Coast castle, and she has absolutely no idea that her sister Ec has been captured, imprisoned in the dungeons right beneath her, and is shipped to America as a slave. From that one moment of separation, Gacy follows each sister's bloodline, chapter by chapter, generation by generation. It's like watching a historical relay race where the baton is trauma. Fa's descendants stay in Ghana, grappling with their family's complicity in the American slave trade and the brutality that comes from it, all the way through the Great Migration to the heroin epidemic in Harlem. The curse in Homecoming is the unbroken chain of cause and effects. Gacy shows with devastating clarity how history isn't just a series of disconnected events, but it's a relentless current. The curse is often symbolized by fire, a memory of a burning village that haunts Fa's lineage. For Ec's line, the curse isn't fire, it's water, representing the ocean of the Middle Passage that separated them from home forever. And yet, this novel isn't just a catalog of pain. It also is a story of resilience. Each generation finds a way to show up, to survive, to love, and to hold on to a piece of their identity. A song Ec sings in the dungeon is passed down to her child, and a black stone pendant Fa's mother gave her is eventually returned to Fa's descendants 7 generations later. This is a symbol of connection that slavery couldn't totally break. Homegoing shows that while trauma is passed down, so are strength, spirit, and the hope of return. And Colson Whitehead, in his 2016 Pulitzer Prize winning novel, gives it a physical map. The Underground Railroad takes the historical metaphor of a network of safe houses and transforms it into a literal physical subway with actual locomotives and tracks. This isn't just a clever literary trick. It allows Whitehead to turn the journey to freedom into a horrifying trip through the American psyche. And it is horrifying, you guys. Our protagonist, Cora, escapes a Georgia plantation where the horrors of slavery are shown with gut-wrenching reality. But her journey on the railroad isn't a simple flight from the south to the north. Each state she travels to is more or less a place on a map and more a different circle of hell. Think Dante's Inferno, if you will. In South Carolina, she finds a progressive society that's running a eugenics experiment, much like the Tuskegee experiment that happens. And in North Carolina, she has to hide in an attic in a town where all Black people have been outlawed and are hanged from trees in what they call the Freedom Trail. This also depicts sundown towns and what happened to them. Whitehead uses this structure to argue that the curse of slavery wasn't just confined to the plantation. No, it mutated itself and embedded itself into the very fabric of this nation. The horrors that Cora faces are allegories for the ongoing devaluation of Black life in America. The railroad itself is no guarantee of freedom, not at all. It's rickety, unreliable, and constantly under threat. The monster here isn't just the sadistic slave catcher Ridgway who hunts Cora, but the entire system that empowers him. Whitehead's novel is historical horror, showing that the real terror of the American history isn't the supernatural, but man-made. While Whitehead gives us racism as a map, Harlem Renaissance author George Schuler gives it a satirical sci-fi twist in his 1931 novel, Black No More. The book's premise is a biting piece of speculative fiction. What if, let's just say, what if Dr. Junius Crookman invented a process called Black No More that could turn people permanently white? Schuyler uses this cure to expose the absurdities of the color line. The story follows Max Disher, who undergoes this procedure to pursue a white woman who rejected him. Reborn as Matthew Fisher, he not only gets the girl, but also in a twist of supreme irony, he actually rises to become the leader of the white supremacist organization. Schuyler satirizes how American society, from its political to its economic structures, is built on racial division. Once the Black menace starts to disappear, the very foundations of white supremacy and Southern economy begin to crumble, revealing that these systems need Blackness in order to survive. The curse here is not just trauma, but the lie of race itself. The novel's final twist reveals that the children of those who use the treatment are born Black, showing that lineage is inescapable and a scientific fix can erase the generational identity and reality of history. While other authors ground their horrors in the American past, River Solomon's 2017 debut novel, An Unkindness of Ghosts, takes the plantation and launches it into space. The story is on the HHS Matilda, a generation starship traveling to a mythical promised land. But this future is a chilling echo of the past. The ship is a brutally segregated society, with dark-skinned people living in the lower decks and white-skinned people living in luxury on the upper decks. The protagonist is Aster, a brilliant neurodivergent healer who is also an outcast. She is a perfect lens for this world, as her mind has to tune the world out and focus on one thing at a time. And what Aster begins to focus on are the conditions around her mother's death. The curse here is the system itself, a structure so deeply ingrained that after 300 years in space, the horrors of the past are still present and perfectly replicated. As one character says about his lineage, sadness is the hardest thing to breed out of the bloodline. Solomon uses the language of science fiction to create a powerful allegory. The ship becomes a container for generational trauma, a place where there is no escape from history. Aster's journey to uncover the secrets of her mother's death becomes a quest to understand the very structure of her world and whether revolution is even possible. By placing slavery in the stars, Solomon forces us to see it as a recurring, seemingly inescapable pattern of power and oppression. A ghost in the house, a cursed bloodline, a nightmare railroad, a satirical cure that backfires, and a starship plantation. These aren't just clever literary devices, they are powerful acts of reclamation. These authors and so many others use the fantastic to make history unavoidable. They give to the invisible wounds of the past, creating stories that explore the curse of intergenerational trauma while celebrating the incredible resilience it takes to survive it. They show us that the past isn't the past. It's a living presence that shapes our world right now. And I think now more than ever, we need these stories. These novels don't offer easy answers or simple escapes. Instead, they demand a reckoning. They force us to look at that monster and understand where it came from and acknowledge the curse that still haunts the American landscape. By imagining these word worlds and giving space to these ghosts, they perform a radical act of defiance, arguing that even in the face of an inherited nightmare, our imagination can be a tool for liberation. These are just 5 examples from a rich and powerful tradition of African American storytellers. If you want to dive into these works for yourself, I've linked my bookshop link in the show notes below. Helping purchase through Bookshop helps independent bookstores and also helps my channel grow as well. I want to know, before I go, I want you to leave in the comment section below what other novels you've read that also explore the theme of generational curses. Please let me know. I want to keep this conversation going. And I have started a Substack, you guys. So I'm building a community there for us where we can talk even more about books and what we're learning and how we're growing with them. So I will link my Substack link in the show notes below. Please go over and join me. I would be so happy to have you. And I think that's it. This has been such a great share. I hope that you have appreciated and got something out of this analysis. If you did get something out of it, would you please like and subscribe? That way it helps this community grow, and it also helps other people, a wider audience, find these books and bring them into their library. Thanks so much. You guys know what to do. Until next time, stay reading. Bye.